Hello again guys, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, we're back in Microsoft Flight Simulator in the Airbus A320. It's early morning on stand 23 here at London Gatwick Airport. The aircraft is almost ready to go. We've just been given our push and start clearance. And in this video we'll be carrying out a flight from London Gatwick to Nantes Atlantique in western France. For our flight this morning we're EasyJet 8961 from Gatwick to Nantes, as I mentioned. It's a very short sector, only around 300 miles, so we'll only be climbing to around flight level 250. Time in the cruise will only be around 15 minutes. We're also pretty lightly loaded here this morning, only 110 passengers on board, so total block fuel for the trip today will be 5.6 tonnes. In terms of our routing, the flight plan has us departing via the Novma 1 X-ray departure. However, we'll be taking the Southampton to Victor departure. I'll explain more about that in the video. That'll take us out towards Southampton, then we'll join the Mike 195 airway to waypoint Marek, November 621 to Lelna, Uniform November 621 to Domok, Uniform Tango 260 to Apollo, Uniform November 862 to position Godan, and then we'll join the Godan 1 Alpha arrival, expecting an ILS 03 into Nantes. I do hope you enjoyed the video guys. If you do, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. But now let's jump into the cockpit of the A320 and begin our push and start. So good morning and welcome to the flight deck of the Airbus A320. We're on stand 23 here at Gatwick Airport on Pier 2 of the South Terminal. We've just been given our clearance for the push and start, so we'll get the aircraft ready now and we'll commence our pushback. 4 start checklist below the line: harnessed, secure, ATC, set, windows, doors, closed, beacon, on, thrust levers, idle, and the park brake is on. So that's the before start checklist complete. The pushback tug just coming over now to join with the aircraft. We'll commence our pushback shortly. And once we started the push, we'll start the engines as well. So park brake can come off. As I say, we're currently on stand 23, so we'll push back onto taxiway Kilo, and then we'll hold on Kilo until we've finished the engine start. We'll discuss our taxi out instructions more once we've completed the after start checklist. So pushing back now. Engine 1 start. We'll monitor the engine start on the EWD, and we'll just have to keep an eye on our pushback as well to make sure that we're not pushed into any obstacles or onto the other apron.
7 Quebec Alpha, good morning, descend up to 3000 feet, QNH 1028 at Pascal, 3000 approach to 8 left.
Descend up to 3000 feet, QNH 1028, request localizer, runway 28 left, and 7 Quebec Alpha.
7 Quebec Alpha, roger, clear for the localizer, only approach from my 28 left.
Clear for localizer, only approach from my 28 left, and 7 Quebec Alpha.
As I say, we'll just continue the pushback until we're on Kilo. Okay, that should do us for the push. And the aircraft is stationary, park brake on. Good start on engine 1, engine 2 start. There goes the tug.
Morning Ryanair 4X-ray, passing 2600 timing, flight roll 90, only P6 Alpha. Ryanair 4X-ray, good day, identified, climb 5120, turn right heading 060. Climbing 120, right heading 060, Ryanair 4X-ray.
There's a couple of ground vehicles that are going to be a little bit in the way there. Hopefully they'll clear before we commence our taxi.
Alright, clear correct, last one runway 28 left, descend flight level 150. direct position, tax for runway 28 left and descent level 150, correction, position lap mode.
MS161 XRM position lap mode.
And a good start on engine 2. So the engine start selector can go back to normal. APU can come off. We'll reset the rudder trim, arm the spoilers, flaps 1 for the takeoff today, and 0 on the trim. After start checklist, anti-ice is off. It's only 10 degrees outside, but there's no visible moisture around the airport, so we'll leave the anti-ice off for now. ECAM status is checked, pitch trim 0.0 checked, rudder trim 0, and the ground crew are clear. That's the after start checklist complete. So for the taxi, as I mentioned, we're currently on taxiway Kilo. We'll taxi down Kilo, turn left onto November, continue on November for taxiway Zulu, and then we'll take Zulu all the way down to Mike and take Mike holding point for runway 26 left. So runway turn off lights and the nose taxi light on, parking brake off.
Indian Charlie Alpha, that's understood. You can stay on this frequency unless otherwise advised.
That's copy, Echo Charlie.
Ryanair 4 X-ray, turn right track to Rule speed max 290 knots. Rule max 290 Ryanair 4 X-ray.
So this next left is taxiway November. And then we want the second left onto Zulu. Ground vehicle just crossing in front of us here. Another one. And another one. So we'll continue the taxi now. I could be wrong, but I can't imagine it's that hard to code vehicles stopping in the vicinity of a player aircraft. It's a little bit tricky to read the taxiway signs, there's a lot of glare on them. That's Juliet off on the left as we expected, that leads down the apron. As I say, we'll take the second left onto Zulu. As you can see, there's a little bit of weather out to the east, but out to the west looks nice and clear. And flight control check. Full up. Full down. Neutral. Full left. Full right, neutral, auto brake is on max. It shouldn't have been selected on until now, but the default 320 has it on when you start on the bay for some reason. And we'll turn the weather radar on. We'll see how we go with the weather radar. It's definitely overly sensitive. We might turn it off again if it's just getting in the way.
161 descent flight level 130. Level 130,
We'll come to a stop at the holding point and then we'll carry out the departure brief.
161 contact over 132.580, correct? W132.580,
So 26 left at Mike. Can't actually see a holding point line, which is a bit strange. Parking brake is set. So today we're cleared for the Southampton to Victor departure off runway 26 left. Straight ahead initially and then a left turn climbing to 4,000 feet at Midhurst.
Good morning, Merit 161, information Romeo, passing 150, descending 130.
We have climb nav blue and an altitude of 4,000. So the before takeoff checklist. Load sheet acknowledged, flight controls checked, flight instruments checked, briefing is confirmed, flap setting is config 1, V-speed thrust. Slightly incorrect depictions here, but we have 137 and we should see flex, but we have idle. And there's no ECAM memo, so the signs are on. Spoilers are armed. Flaps set for takeoff. Auto brake max, and the takeoff config is normal. Below the line, takeoff runway, it's runway 26 left confirmed. Cabin crew have been advised. Engine start selector is normal, and the packs are on. That's the before takeoff checklist complete. Clear for the takeoff, so the strobes and the landing lights can go on. Nose light can go to takeoff. Parking brake off. It's clear on the approach.
Numbers 161, good day to you. Descend to flight number 120, further descent in 2 minutes.
120, wheel permanent 161.
56, Shamrock 261, thanks.
And the wind almost straight down the runway at 17 knots. Take off. Says Manflex 60, SRS runway, thrust set, 100 knots, V1, rotate, and positive climb, gear up, climb, which we shouldn't see yet. And again, the aircraft behaving rather strangely on the takeoff there. The rudder input in particular, pretty strange. And very heavy in the elevator as well. The vertical flight director guidance is completely wrong. The lateral guidance seems to be okay. We'll come back to lever climb now. It says thrust climb. Pitch the aircraft nose down just to allow us to accelerate. Levelling off at 4,000 feet until Midhurst. And the aircraft should accelerate all the way up to 250 knots, but it's not going to do that. We'll take flaps up and we'll go selected speed 250 knots. So again, some strange behaviour from the aircraft there. We should be an out now, we're at 4,000 feet. Try selecting open climb, see if that puts us into out. Still flying manually at the moment, just waiting to get a reasonable mode before I engage the autopilot. And we're now in open descent, which would be more reasonable since we're above 4,000 feet. Hopefully, the aircraft will now capture out. And it still doesn't seem to have too much interest in doing so. We'll engage the autopilot and see what it does. Okay. It says out nav autopilot 1. So obviously the nav and the out mode's not working without the autopilot engaged, it seems. Which again is completely incorrect. Anyway, the flaps are up. Disarm the spoilers. After takeoff checklists. Landing gear is up. Flaps retracted. And the packs are on. So the after takeoff checklist complete. So we just continue straight ahead towards Midhurst at 4,000 feet and then we'll climb up to our cruising level. Only climbing up to flight level 250 today. It's a very short sector. Simbrief reckon that flight level 250 was the optimum altitude. As you can see, overall a pretty nice morning here on the southern coast of the UK. There is a little bit more weather out to the west, and actually earlier on this morning the weather was all the way over Gatwick as well. Seems to be clearing up as the day progresses. And equally it should be a nice morning in Nantes as well. It's quite likely in reality that air traffic control would give you a further climb at this point. But we're just flying the SID for the sake of doing something a little bit different. Normally I avoid it in this sim currently as it doesn't work awfully well. And as I already mentioned, unfortunately we had to do without air traffic control today as that was pretty broken still, despite the recent update. Unfortunately I'm finding that updates don't really seem to achieve a whole lot at the moment with this sim.
Maybe departure wind is 120 degrees.
Anyway, 2 miles to run now till Midhurst, so we'll begin our climb shortly.
From the wind again, please, Shamrock 269.
The wind check 120 degrees at 5 knots, Shamrock 269. Continue approach.
Continue Shamrock 269.
Just starting our turn now towards Novema. And passing over Midhurst, so we'll climb now flight level 250. And we'll go open climb as I'm not really sure how good the autopilot is still in this thing. It says open climb, should see out blue, and flight level 250. Again, the weather radar, way overly sensitive. I mean, there's just a little bit of, probably not even overcast cloud off to the north, and it's painting red on the weather radar.
Rider 923, Papa, stand by, fly back, Ryanair 534. Rider report ready.
So that's 36,000 feet, that's the transition altitude. Standard set and cross-checked. See there's a bit more cloud over the northern coast of France there as well. Nice clear day though, you can already see the northern coast. So there's 10,000 feet, landing lights off. And we'll go manage speed. So accelerating up to 320 knots. Be interesting to see how the aircraft handles the climb and the level off. I actually lost count of how many times I've already tried to record this video. There's been so many problems with the sim. Not anything like crashes to be fair, but just little bugs that cause the video not to be worth recording and having to start again. On the last attempt, for example, we got into the cruise and the aircraft decided to decelerate all the way back to 260 knots for no reason that I could discern, and the approach into Nantes was just an absolute disaster. Nothing worked as it was supposed to. So we'll try again and hopefully, well, it's certainly not third time lucky, but maybe 8th or 9th. Anyway, we've accelerated up to 320 knots now and the aircraft continuing to climb, so that's working rather well. You can see the sun coming up in the east just off the left wingtip. It's rather pretty. And we have the Isle of Wight just down below us towards the southwest. I did seriously consider after the last attempt just packing in recording in Microsoft Flight Simulator and recording the whole thing in P3D. But graphically, of course, there's just no measure between P3D and Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I thought we'd give this flight one last go and hopefully have a little bit more success. I think without using the default air traffic control system, that's going to help us a lot. They gave us pretty poor descent clearances and vectors into Nantes, so we'll just make that up ourselves on the way in.
Air 4 X-ray climb 5150, you can contact Dublin on 129.180, goodbye.
And just approaching Southampton now, you can see the Sierra Alpha Mike VOR on the navigation display.
129.180, climbing 150, Ryanair 4 X-ray, bye bye.
Altitude left, clear for takeoff, please.
Clear for takeoff on right 2 left, 105, continue. Emirates 161, descend to flight level 80.
Descend level 80, Emirates 161.
Passing through 20,000 feet. It's nice and clear generally. I probably would turn the seatbelt signs off right now, but they're in up, unfortunately, in the default Airbus.
Ryanair 4 X-ray, passing 110, climbing 150, in Madrula. Romeo.
Ryanair 4 X-ray, good day, climb flight level 230.
Climbing level 230, Ryanair 4 X-ray.
Done a couple of flights on the channel around the Isle of Wight. For anyone that hasn't seen them, it's a really nice place to fly around, it's good fun. It's nice and small, so you can easily explore the whole island in one flight. So yeah, if no one's been there before, I recommend a little scenic hop around the island, it's good fun. And beginning our turn now out towards the southwest, towards waypoint Marek, and at Marek we'll turn south heading towards France.
Camrock 26 Mike, surface wind 120 degrees 7, altitude left, clear to land.
Clear land to nav, Camrock 26 Mike.
That's one to go. Outstar. I would say that that's probably a little bit early for the aircraft to really be going into Outstar, but as long as it captures the altitude we're not too concerned. This default Airbus definitely has a lot of quirks that aren't very familiar with the real Airbus. Again, the speed coming back, so we'll go selected speed, come back up to 320 knots. We don't want to be crawling along, even though it's a short sector. I would probably go into Mach right now, but I gather there's a bug where if you go into Mach you won't get it back again in speed. We want speed for the arrival, so we'll leave it in speed.
FedEx 1 hotel and pushing transfer, that's Sierra Phoenix 102
So just waiting for the aircraft to capture outcruise. Again, the weather radar picture and the real world conditions really not matching up, unfortunately. There's Outstar, should be Outcruise Star. Outcruise! So the TCAS, there's not much we can do with that, and unfortunately we can't check the systems pages of the ECAM either. So we'll settle into the cruise now. We'll enjoy a few sights along the way until we reach top of descent, and then we'll come back at top of descent to set up the aircraft for the arrival and fly the approach into Nantes.
M50 Romeo, I'm going to go ahead please. Reverb 50 Romeo, QNH 1028 hectopascal. We also wait copies and we have 5 miles from Rio, current hold out flight complete. Reverb 50 Romeo, understood, just advise your intentions today. Raven 50 Romeo, after Ringo will be routed towards Arklow town for CFR also survey about 1 hour, 30 minutes, 1,800 and then back to Liverpool. And we'll be descending shortly after Liverpool. Raven 50 Romeo, that's understood, your own navigation towards Arklow, maintain VF4. Navigation towards Arklow, CFR Raven 50 Romeo.
Bonjour, le Dragon 67 en
un tango pour éviter la GNSS 047 sur Ali. Et pour l'instant, on est en système de position réelle.
Du Dragon 74 Feet, c'est un vol ASIAS.
Oui, c'est correct, on est parti. On travaille cette journée et maintenant on retourne.
Tu veux Dragon 74 et capacité 5031, autorisé à l'approche des
Autorisé à approche de 1 pour le Dragon 74 et on vous rappelle maintenant à Bravo.
Reçu.
So welcome back, we just passed over waypoint Apollo. We'll now get the aircraft set up for the arrival and then we'll shortly commence our descent. So we'll go auto brake low for the landing. In the box we have the ILS runway 03 with the go down 1 alpha arrival and a NITM transition. The arrival itself, the MDA for the ILS 03 is 280. And the weather this morning, the wind 240 at 5 knots, 10 degrees, and a QNH 1019. That's pretty much all we can set up in the box on the default aircraft. For the approach itself then, we're expecting the ILS 03. It's actually going to be a slight tailwind onto the ILS, but I would imagine in the real world they would prefer the ILS 03 over the VOR 21. So probably they would give you that even with a slight tailwind. ILS 03, it's 109.9, and November Tango is the identifier. Final approach track 029, 027 in the box. My chart is a lot older, so there's probably some magnetic drift to take into account there. Aerodrome elevation 90 feet. There's a profile check 1300 feet at 4 DME. Down to an MDA of 280. And the risk approach climb runway heading to 1300 feet, then a left turn climbing to 3000. And it's max 200 knots in the go around. So we can clean up. For the terrain, there's no high terrain around Nantes. The MSA is 2,000 feet. Weather, we've already discussed briefly, but it's a pretty nice morning in Nantes, there's no real considerations there. Landing off 03 with auto brake low, idle reverse, planning to vacate, probably off taxiway Delta, vacating to the right. And our minimum diversion fuel this morning for Bordeaux is 2.3 tonnes. So arriving into Nantes with nearly an extra 50 minutes worth of fuel, which is quite a bit more than I planned for. I assume that the default A320's fuel burn figures are slightly off. Anyway, as we're at 25,000 feet, we're looking to start our descent around 100 miles before touchdown. Unfortunately, there's still no distance to run capability in the MCDU. And even if we try and tune the VOR, we're still not going to get any DME information there. So we just have to eyeball the ND. 60 miles out to Uniform Sierra Romeo. It's probably about 20 miles outbound. And then 20 miles inbound again. So that's 100 miles, so we'll start our descent now. We'll descend all the way down to 2,000 feet, which is the incept altitude for the ILS. And we'll just finesse everything with vertical speed. So I find that's the most likely way that we can descend in the aircraft without having any major issues. Ground speed's 440, so we'll descend at 2,200 feet a minute. That's us. Okay, we'll just have to go open descent initially to get the aircraft coming down. Vertical speed not working correctly there. So it's open descent, should see out blue and 2,000 feet. Try vertical speed again. So there's VS minus 2200 out blue. Keep an eye on the speed and make sure that the aircraft can actually maintain speed with a descent rate of 2200 feet a minute. Should be alright though.
34 unités, la dernière météo d'Annecy. Ouais, je vous écoute. 04 à l'arrivée, avant 030 degrés 3 nœuds, ici sub à 10, nuage couvert 1500 pieds, température plus 9, QNH 1031.
And you can see there's not much weather to speak of on the arrival either, just a little bit of scattered cloud around.
Oui, j'ai noté 060, 1500 pieds, 1031, il y a 04 à l'arrivée pour le Dragon en 14 minutes.
So the transition level is by air traffic control. We'll obviously have to make up our own transition altitude today. And in fact, just so we don't forget, we'll set the altimeter now. So QNH 1019. That's according to the real world conditions. I'm not sure if the sim is depicting that accurately today or not.
Dans 75, je réduis les vitesses minutes d'approche et contactez la tour de Grenoble 119,3, au revoir.
And that's why I really miss not having accurate weather depiction in the sim yet. You can't use real world resources to plan and carry out your flight, which is a real negative for me. And that's QFE, we don't want QFE. We want QNH, so the QNH is set 1019. And we turn the seatbelt signs on now. Although again they are already on as they're in op currently. So the approach checklist, briefing is confirmed, ECAM status checked, seatbelts on, BARF QNH 1019 set, minimum, Barra 280 set. Still in the cruise phase, we should be in the descent phase, so that's not working correctly. And the engine start selector is normal. That's the approach checklist complete. I did try tuning the November Tango Sierra, the non-VOR manually on the last flight just to get a DME off that, but the DME is still not working in the default Airbus currently. It says 18,000 feet, so we need 72 miles to run now. And we're probably about 80 miles to run, so we're a touch low, but we'll definitely err on the side of caution here as we don't have an accurate distance readout.
5 Delta, cross on 17 right. Donc une forme de quoi, contactez Marseille, pointe 6, décimal 705, au revoir.
Pointe 6, 705 pour Air France 76 uniforme 2 fois, au revoir.
And we'll probably have to get a little bit creative with how we fly the arrival and the ILS. Again, on my previous attempt, the aircraft really not handling either particularly well. The same goes for configuring the aircraft. On the previous flight, without flaps 1, the aircraft was basically uncontrollable and trying to pitch towards the ground. So just approaching waypoint go down now, that's the start of the arrival. All the altitudes on the way down are minimum altitudes, so there's no altitude restrictions to meet as such. And as usual, we'll just unfortunately have to disregard the altitudes for the arrival, as the aircraft is pretty much incapable of flying them accurately. Keeping an eye on the temperature, it's 5 degrees currently. If we enter the cloud, we'll need to turn the engine anti-ice on, unless it warms up considerably.
Delta, contact ground 121, decimal 830, bye bye. 121, tournez à gauche au cap 290.
Gauche cap 290 et next cool 221.
Just come back slightly on the vertical speed. And once we pass through 11,000 feet, we'll start reducing the speed to 250 knots.
Dragon 74 vérifié, on passe à la Tango. Reçu.
So 20 miles to run now to a uniform Sierra Romeo. As I said, about 20 miles outbound and 20 miles inbound again. It's about 60 miles, so we are again pretty low now. We'll start bringing the speed back. And we'll reduce the vertical speed whilst we allow the speed to bleed off.
Tournez à gauche, cap 270.
Gauche cap 270 et next cool 221.
And the airport should be roughly 20 miles off the nose now. So there's 10 above. Can't make out the airport visually at the moment, but you can make out the Loire River, which passes just to the north of the airport. So there's 10,000 feet. We'll leave the VS at around 1,000 feet a minute for now. That should help us get back on profile. And we can activate the approach phase now we're in selected speed. So the approach phase is activated, ILS 03.
Dragon 74 unité, on a passé ici à Papa 04.
Du Dragon 74 unité avec un petit tour 18 décimal 2, bonne journée.
Avec un petit tour 18 2, merci, bonne journée également. Pour le Dragon 74 unité, rebonjour.
You can see the city just out to the east.
Dragon 741 appel.
Oui, affirme le 741, bonjour.
Et bonjour, Dragon 741, continuez l'approche RNP X-ray 04, le vent 052,52 et vous me rappelez Fox Papa 04 X-ray.
Et on poursuit sur la procédure, on appelle le Fox Papa 04 X-ray, le Dragon 740.
So the aircraft is nicely coming back on profile now. And plus 7 degrees on the temperature, but we're clear of all the cloud.
Next 221, descendez 3300 pieds, QNH 29.
1300 pieds 1029 et next cool 221.
Fairly strong wind, even up at 7,000 feet here, 40 odd knots. As I say, once we turn outbound on the arrival, probably as we start our turn onto base, we might have to intervene manually, go into heading and fly the approach in heading until we capture the localizer and the glide slope. There you can see the airport down below us now at our 11 o'clock.
921, tourne à gauche cap 200.
À gauche, cap 200 et 221.
It's a pretty sizable lake out to the southwest. Not sure what the name of that is. In fact, we can even start reducing that vertical speed a little bit more. Somewhere off on our right wing is Saint-Nazaire. So tracking outbound now for 15 miles and then making a turn back in towards the ILS. So it's 30 miles to run. And we need 24 miles, so looking good. Keep the aircraft coming down and we'll actually level off early. Not ideal in the real world, but I just want to make it as easy as possible for the aircraft to actually fly the approach.
Maintenance au parking principal, on voudrait procéder pour le point d'attente Charlie et depuis Charlie pénétrer sur la principale et remonter au Saitek. Véhicule maintenance, bonjour, tu peux procéder point d'attente Charlie et pénétrer depuis Charlie sur la piste.
So we have November Tango identified on the primary flight display. That's the identifier we're looking for the ILS-03.
Et tour de véhicule maintenance, on procède pour Charlie depuis Charlie, on pénètre sur la principale et on appellera travaux thermiques.
41, piste 04 autorisée atterrissage, le vent est dans l'axe pour 5 nœuds.
On atterrit, piste 04, le vent c'est 141.
About 20 miles to run now, 5,000 feet, so the profile's good. I think what we'll do, we don't want to come outside of the localizer, so when we get to the waypoint Romeo 218, we'll just go into heading and intercept the localizer ourselves. Keep bringing the speed back. Again, the green dot and the flap limiting speed unrealistically close together. However, we'll take the flap as soon as we can, as I found that the aircraft currently is basically uncontrollable at low speed without flap 1. So there's green dots. As soon as we get below the flap limiting speed, we'll take flaps 1.
On Bonjour, prepare for 1 Yankee, descending flight level 120 to Salah. We're at A320 and we've got information Sierra.
Bonjour, prepare for 1 Yankee, proceed direct to XNet, transect level 100 for ILS 17 left.
ILS 17 left, direct to XNet, descend flight 100, confirm that's prepare for 1 Yankee.
So speed checked, flaps 1. Come back to 180 knots now. See, we're just passing through the glide slope. And we can ease off on that descent rate again now. We'll be below the glide slope before we intercept it.
Bonjour, 19 Hotel, from Alpha 3, line up runway 17 right, after takeoff, wind 25 degrees 1 knot.
Alpha 3, lining up 17 right, and clear for takeoff, number 19 Hotel.
Prepare for 1 Yankee, just confirm, clear flight for bit.
Transect level 100.
That's the descend flight 100, so prepare for 1 Yankee.
So starting our turn onto a base leg essentially. It's 1 to go. And we'll come into heading now. So misclick on my part there. And we'll take a heading about 080 to intercept the localizer. Says heading. Yeah, I just accidentally slipped across to the speed there while I was clicking the mouse wheel. We'll wait until we're actually close to the localizer, otherwise again I find the aircraft does some pretty strange things. Just see the runway out at our 10 o'clock. And we have 13 miles to run now. Take flaps 2, speed check flaps 2.
221, tournez à gauche 420 pour intercepter l'ILS 09, autorisé à approche.
120 à gauche et autorisé à approcher LS 09, cool 921.
And we'll arm the approach now. So there's Loke. Should have autopilot 1 and 2. Autopilot 1. Should see glide slope as well, keep an eye on that.
For 1 Yankee, descent now level 70.
Looks like the aircraft is going to track the localizer at least anyway. If it does struggle to fly the ILS, then we'll just disconnect the autopilot and fly manually.
Contactez la tour de Grenoble, 119,3, au revoir.
93, merci, à bientôt, LS 221.
We'll just keep the aircraft coming down, we'll see if levelling off will put the aircraft into out, and then there we go. There's outstar and glide slope. Just wanted to make sure that it was actually going to capture the glide slope. 8 miles, gear down. Speed brake is armed.
C'est contrôlé pour le temps.
Constatez vers le parc et en arrivant, Dragon.
En constaté ensuite en arrivant à tout ça.
Speed back to 160 knots. Flaps 3, speed checked. Flaps 3. And flaps full, speed checked. Flaps full. Landing checklist, cabin crew have been advised, auto thrust, speed, auto brake, low, and the ECAM memo. Again, no ECAM memo. So signs are on, landing gear is down, flaps set for landing, and the spoilers are armed. It's the landing checklist complete. There's glide slope, set 3,000 feet for the missed approach, and 3,000 blue. Managed speed. Be interesting to see whether the aircraft still has its issues with approach speed and dropping a wing on final. I have found if you leave the autopilot until around 500 feet it does tend to do an okay job in the flare, so that's what we'll do. And so far it's doing a decent job of flying the ILS, which is nice to see.
Fox Hotel Uniform Romeo India, good day, flying flight level 80, direct Mike Tango Lima. Request latest of information at Valence.
Stable.
Bonjour Fox Romeo India, quels sont vos... bonjour Fox Romeo India, what are your intentions at Valence?
Getting a few gusts here from the wind, which is not probably going to help us with our flare.
500.
Checked. Just getting slightly low on the glide slope. Okay, we'll disconnect now.
300.
Flight director's not doing a great job of guiding us there.
Familiar with it to perform one DB procedure, then followed by one RNP procedure, and go around the minimums and flight plan to Grenoble.
Retard. 5.
Okay, let's touch down. And we'll go reverse. So spoilers, reverse green. No decel, manually braking already. Cancel the reverse. And we'll take the first exit on the right. Yeah, so the wing didn't really seem to drop there, but the behaviour in the flare itself was okay, but after that the aircraft just felt a little bit odd. Really still wanting to fly, even though the spoilers would have deployed at that point. So a little bit strange. So vacating to the right.
Let's copy that.
And as usual, we'll just make our own way to the bay. So strobes off. Landing lights off. And it's a short taxi, so we'll start the APU. Flaps can come up. Spoilers are disarmed. We'll turn the weather radar off. After landing checklist, flaps retracted, spoilers disarmed, APU starting, radars off, and the predictive wind shear is off. That's the after landing checklist complete.
Lima approach, bonjour, Sanchuk 43 Lima, we are descend level 150 to be over now, and information here, QNH 1029.
Nantes 43 Lima, bonjour, descend, maintain level 150, reaching, expect vectors LS17 left.
We'll take this next bay on the left.
Romeo India, descent level 70. For weather information, you can contact Valence for a while if you wish, and call me back once I can see.
So we'll taxi ourselves onto the bay. There's obviously no guidance for us. We'll just have to guesstimate the correct stopping location.
Descent maintain 150, expect vector and FLS 110 left, Sanchuk 43 Lima.
Say about there. So park brake is set. APU is on. Now we'll shut down the engines. Seatbelts will go off. And the beacon off. And the transponder off. Parking checklist, APU bleed on. Engines off. Seatbelts off. External lights. We should have just got the external lights before we taxied onto the bay there. Fuel pumps off. And the park brake is on. And that's the parking checklist complete. So there you go guys, we just about managed to get the default A320 from A to B in one piece. As I mentioned in the video, I was absolutely plagued with issues trying to record this video. The default air traffic control system is still a bit of a non-starter unfortunately. And as for the default A320, whilst it is possible to fly the aircraft from A to B, it's very much a case of manhandling it and working your way around its many bugs and inconsistencies. Unfortunately, it's looking to me like Microsoft Flight Simulator still has quite a long way to go as a decent IFR heavy jet platform. Anyway guys, I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. It really helps the channel to grow and I really appreciate everyone's support. If you have any comments or questions for me, please leave them down in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them. But for now, thanks very much and I'll see you all again soon.